Today, we're going to be ranking the top 8 bands of the 1960s. This list is going to focus and be based on these bands' contributions to music and pop culture during the 1960s only. We'll be leaving off a lot of great bands that were around in the 60s, but we felt contributed their top and most important work in other decades. Starting off our list at number 8, The Beach Boys. Formed in Hawthorne, California in 1961, the Beach Boys, led by brothers Brian, Dennis, and Carl Wilson, along with their cousin Mike Love and friend Al Jardine, became the ultimate embodiment of California's laid-back, sun-kissed lifestyle. From their first hits like Surfin' Safari to the iconic Good Vibrations, their music was a perfect blend of catchy melodies, intricate harmonies, and that fresh, free spirit of youth. Their breakthrough came with Surfing USA in 1963, a song so infectious it defined a generation's love for surfing and beach culture. But the band's genius didn't stop at surfing anthems. Brian Wilson, the musical mastermind, pushed the boundaries of pop music, creating Pet Sounds in 1966. A masterpiece that was ahead of its time, full of lush instrumentation, experimental sounds, and deeply emotional lyrics. God Only Knows, one of the highlights of Pet Sounds, has been described as one of the most beautiful pop songs ever written. The Beach Boys weren't just a pop band, they were pioneers, elevating rock music into something artistic, something emotional. The Beach Boys' influence on music is still felt today, and their harmonies have inspired countless artists. Their songs continue to define summer, and their legacy as the kings of surf rock remains untouchable. Whether you're riding the waves or cruising down the highway, the Beach Boys will always remind us of those carefree, sun-drenched days. Next at number 7, the Yardbirds. The Yardbirds could be on this list for exposing the world to 3 of the top guitarists the world would ever know alone. Formed in 1963, the Yardbirds were at the forefront of the British invasion, led by the magnetic vocals of Keith Relf, but it was the band's guitar players who made history. The Yardbirds were a breeding ground for some of the greatest guitarists of all time: Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page. Each one left their mark, pushing the boundaries of guitar music and laying the groundwork for future generations of rock stars. Their early hits, like For Your Love, fused blues with a pop sensibility that captured the imagination of listeners. But it was their experimental phase that truly set them apart. Songs like Shapes of Things and Heartful of Soul blended Eastern influences, psychedelic effects, and innovative guitar work, creating a sound that felt futuristic yet rooted in deep tradition. Each guitarist brought something special. Clapton's fiery blues playing made him a legend, but it was Jeff Beck who really pushed the band into uncharted territory with his mind-bending solos and avant-garde techniques. Later, Jimmy Page would take the reins, and the band would continue to evolve, pushing rock's sonic limits before Page went on to form the New Yardbirds, later renamed Led Zeppelin. The Yardbirds weren't just about music, they were about revolution. Their groundbreaking approach to guitar and their experimentation with sound influenced everyone from the Beatles to Jimi Hendrix to modern-day rock bands. And while the lineup changed over the years, the spirit of innovation stayed constant. The Yardbirds may have only lasted a few years in their prime, but their legacy is as solid as the riffs that define their sound. From the blues to psychedelic rock, they shaped what would become the foundation for much of rock music that followed. Number 6 on our list, Creedence Clearwater Revival. Formed in 1967, Creedence Clearwater Revival, led by the unmistakable voice and songwriting genius of John Fogerty, blended swamp rock, blues, and folk with a touch of protest, creating a sound that would become iconic. Songs like Bad Moon Rising and Down on the Corner captured the American spirit, from its struggles to its joys, all wrapped in infectious melodies. CCR's music was deceptively simple. With their straightforward, foot-stomping rhythm and Fogerty's twangy guitar, they brought a sense of authenticity that connected with listeners on a deeper level. And it wasn't just the music, it was the message. Tracks like Fortunate Son became anthems for the disillusioned, a rallying cry against the inequality and political unrest of the times. But what made Creedence truly stand out wasn't just their lyrics, it was the energy. The band's tight, no-frills sound, which felt like it came from the heart of the American heartland, resonated with anyone who believed in the power of rock and roll to speak the truth. Their combination of rootsy blues, country, and rock laid the groundwork for what we know as American rock music. With hits like Proud Mary, CCR mastered the art of storytelling through music. They captured the essence of everyday life, whether it was driving down the river or standing up against injustice. Despite the band's relatively short run, they became one of the most influential groups of the 60s, with their music still playing in the hearts of fans around the world. In a time when the world was changing fast, Creedence Clearwater Revival gave us songs that felt timeless, songs that spoke to the soul, and with every strum of Fogerty's guitar and every beat of their drums, they made sure we would never forget their mark on rock history. On to number 5, the Rolling Stones. Formed in 1962, the Stones were fronted by the charismatic Mick Jagger and the legendary Keith Richards. During most of the band's first decade, however, it was oft-forgotten multi-instrumentalist Brian Jones that was the de facto leader of the group. With their sharp fashion, swaggering attitude, and rebellious spirit, they were the perfect counterpoint to the more wholesome image of the Beatles. While the Fab Four were singing about love and peace, the Stones were singing about dissatisfaction, frustration, and defiance. In 1965, they released their anthem, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, a track that forever defined the rock and roll attitude. With its explosive guitar riff and Jagger's snarky, defiant lyrics, it became the soundtrack of a generation that was tired of the status quo. But it wasn't just about being loud or rebellious, it was about being real. The Stones dug deep into blues, R&B, and rock, adding their own gritty twist. Songs like Paint It Black, As Tears Go By, and Ruby Tuesday blended diverse influences, creating a sound that was raw, emotional, and undeniably magnetic. They brought the underground to the mainstream, giving voice to the youth that felt alienated, disillusioned, and ready to break free. By the end of the decade, the Rolling Stones had become more than just a band. They were a symbol of rebellion. They embodied the counterculture's rejection of authority and conformity, embracing a lifestyle that was both decadent and dangerous. Whether it was their electrifying live performances, their chaotic rock star persona, or their unapologetic attitudes, the Stones were a reflection of the times. As the 60s came to a close, the Stones weren't just riding the wave of success. They were defining it. Their music, their style, their energy, it all became a blueprint for rock and roll for generations to come. For more on the Rolling Stones, check out our video focusing on bands from the 70s to see the direction the band went after the untimely and tragic death of Brian Jones. Next on our list at number 4, Cream. In 1966, a band formed that would forever change the sound of rock and roll. Combining raw talent, blistering solos, and a mix of blues, psychedelia, and hard rock, Cream became the ultimate power trio, pushing the boundaries of what music could be. At the heart of Cream was Eric Clapton, the guitarist who was already a legend with the Yardbirds. Alongside him were Jack Bruce, a virtuoso bassist with a commanding voice, and Ginger Baker, a drummer whose explosive style would make him one of the most influential percussionists in rock history. Together, they were a force of nature, blending blues with experimental improvisation. Cream's sound was unlike anything anyone had heard before. Loud, energetic, and full of fire. Songs like Sunshine of Your Love became instant classics, with Clapton's soaring guitar riff and Bruce's soulful bass lines creating a sound that was both smooth and raw. But what set Cream apart wasn't just their ability to write hits, it was their ability to improvise, to take a song in unexpected directions and stretch it into something unique. Tracks like Crossroads showed the band's incredible musicianship and love of the blues. Clapton's fiery guitar solos, mixed with Baker's jazz-influenced drumming, created a magical chemistry that was electric, literally and figuratively. Their live performances were legendary, pushing the limits of rock and roll and leaving crowds stunned with every show. But it wasn't all about raw power. Their album, Disraeli Gears, released in 1967, was a psychedelic masterpiece that captured the experimental spirit of the time. Tracks like White Room showcased the band's versatility, with its haunting atmosphere and intricate musical textures, proving they weren't just a hard rock and blues band, but pioneers in blending genres. Ultimately, Clapton's desire to move on to create different types of music and the continuous feuding of Bruce and Baker meant the world only got to experience Cream for a few short years of recording and touring, but their impact was monumental. Their groundbreaking fusion of blues, rock, and jazz influenced generations of musicians and set the stage for countless rock bands to come. At number 3 on our list, The Doors. Formed in 1965, The Doors were led by Jim Morrison, a charismatic and enigmatic frontman whose poetic lyrics, wild stage presence, and deep gravelly voice would become legendary. Alongside him were Robbie Krieger on guitar, John Densmore on drums, and Ray Manzarek on keyboards, creating a sound that was as unpredictable as it was mesmerizing. Together, they blended jazz, blues, psychedelia, and rock into something entirely unique. Their debut album, released in 1967, became an instant classic. The song Light My Fire launched them into stardom with its hypnotic, jam-driven rhythm and Morrison's captivating vocals. The band's fearless experimentation with instrumental sections and Manzarek's signature organ sound made their music feel both otherworldly and deeply rooted in the human experience. But the Doors weren't just about catchy singles. They were about creating an atmosphere. Morrison's dark and often surreal lyrics delved into themes of freedom, love, and existentialism. Songs like The End and When the Music's Over were raw and intense, reflecting the chaotic spirit of the times while showcasing their willingness to explore uncharted musical territory. The Doors embraced the idea of breaking on through to new dimensions, both musically and philosophically. Though the band's music was rooted in the counterculture of the 60s, their influence transcended the decade. Morrison's mystique, his ability to blur the lines between performance and poetry, made him an icon of rock's rebellious spirit. The Doors didn't just play music, they created an experience that left an indelible mark on generations to come. Tragically, Morrison's life was cut short in 1971, but the Doors' music lives on. The band attempted to press on in the absence of their former leader, but was never able to capture that same magic they put to tape in the 60s. Songs like Riders on the Storm continue to capture the haunting beauty of their sound, a mix of darkness and light, chaos and control. Next up, we've got the Jimi Hendrix Experience at number 2. Formed in London in 1966, the Jimi Hendrix Experience was a trio like no other. With bassist Noel Redding, drummer Mitch Mitchell, and of course, Jimi Hendrix on lead guitar and vocals, they unleashed a sonic revolution that would echo through the annals of rock history. Hendrix's playing wasn't just virtuosic, it was otherworldly. With his unorthodox techniques, wild distortion, and mind-bending use of feedback, he turned the electric guitar into an instrument of pure expression. Their 1967 debut album, Are You Experienced?, blew the doors off the music scene. The opening track, Purple Haze, was a sonic assault, full of fuzzed-out riffs and lyrics that felt like a journey into the unknown. But it wasn't just about volume or speed. It was about emotion, creativity, and breaking every rule of guitar playing. Hendrix's improvisational style and groundbreaking use of effects turned the guitar into a voice, bending it to his will. With tracks like Foxy Lady and Hey Joe, the Jimi Hendrix Experience showed they were more than just a one-hit wonder. They were a powerhouse. Hendrix's ability to blend blues, rock, and psychedelia created a sound that felt entirely new. He didn't just play guitar, he redefined what it meant to be a guitarist. His performances were legendary, from his iconic rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock to the raw energy of live shows that left audiences in awe. But Hendrix was more than a guitarist. He was a musical visionary. On albums like Axis, Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland, his creativity reached new heights, incorporating layers of sound, groundbreaking studio techniques, and mind-expanding lyrics. Hendrix wasn't just about pushing the boundaries of guitar playing. He was shattering the very concept of what rock music could be. Though his time with the Jimi Hendrix Experience was short, their impact was monumental. Hendrix's revolutionary playing inspired everyone from rock legends to future guitarists. His music wasn't just heard, it was felt. To this day, kids all over the world pick up a guitar in hopes of emulating Hendrix and the magic he created, and it all started with Mitchell and Redding in the Experience. Finally, at number 1 on our list, we have perhaps the most important band to ever exist, the Beatles. In the early 1960s, 4 young men from Liverpool, England, came together to form a band that would change the world forever. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr weren't just any band. They were the architects of a musical revolution. When they burst onto the global stage in 1963, their infectious energy and harmonies quickly captivated hearts everywhere. Songs like She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand made them international superstars, and the world was never the same. But the Beatles weren't content with just being a pop sensation. By 1965, they had already pushed the boundaries of what popular music could do. Rubber Soul introduced a more mature sound, blending folk and rock with thought-provoking lyrics. And by the time Revolver was released in 1966, the Beatles had moved beyond simple love songs. They were experimenting with new studio techniques, exploring psychedelia, and crafting music that defied expectations. With albums like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967, the Beatles reached new artistic heights. It wasn't just an album, it was an experience, a concept album that mixed rock, classical, and experimental music in a way that had never been done before. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and A Day in the Life were masterpieces of the psychedelic era, pushing the limits of what pop music could express. But beyond the music, the Beatles were also cultural icons. Their impact wasn't just about chart-topping singles. It was about how they shaped the way we thought, dressed, and even viewed the world. They weren't just leading a band, they were leading a revolution, changing how people saw music, art, and life itself. Their music continued to evolve, and by the time the Beatles was released in 1968, they had become the voice of a generation. The Beatles taught us to think outside the box, to push boundaries, and to believe that music could change the world. Though they disbanded in 1970, the legacy of the Beatles remains as strong as ever. Their music continues to resonate with every new generation, from the raw energy of Twist and Shout to the introspective beauty of Let It Be. The Beatles didn't just create songs, they created the soundtrack for the modern world. We hope you enjoyed our list. Let us know if you agree or disagree in the comments. Did we leave anyone off that should have been listed? Remember to like and subscribe to get notified when more videos like this are posted. See you in the next one.